Well, I asked Steven if he could come open up for me today, and he's busy. So I thought I would at least make it somewhat entertaining for you guys. As we have in past years, I'll talk a little bit just about where the organization is after 6 seasons, then talk a little bit about kind of outlook going forward, and then talk a little bit about the season, and then from there you guys can ask, obviously, any questions that you'd like. Obviously, finishing our 6th season in Oklahoma City, we're really excited about what we're building, what we've established, and the identity that we're striving to create for the Thunder. The relationships that we have here and that we're cultivating with our fans, our community, everybody involved with the Thunder, we value them greatly, and we're incredibly grateful for the support that we've received and looking forward to Season 7. In terms of just outlook going forward, I think that we're in the midst of a really special time and place, a unique time and place for the organization with the types of seasons that we've been able to put together. I think looking at the age of our team and the returning nature of the team coming back for next season is reason to continue to be optimistic about our ability to sustain a high-performance organization, a high-performance team. With that being said, as we've said in years past, we're going to need to demonstrate tremendous discipline, tremendous humility, tremendous focus, and a lot of independent thinking in relation to how we're going to be able to continue to extend the type of run that we've had. If it was something that we took lightly, I think we wouldn't be in this position. But we have a very unique opportunity to have extended success, and we need to capitalize on that and respect that and come back to the season next year starting from scratch and building ourselves back up as we did this year. We're in a very manageable salary cap situation financially and most importantly strategically, both coming into this summer and looking out for the future. We always want to be in a position where we have flexibility to retain core players, make adjustments and additions. We feel like we're positioned well to be able to sustain the performance of the team. This past season, obviously it was a great year. Did not finish the way that we had hoped. Only one team can win. We respect that. We want to put all our energies towards taking the steps to capitalize on our opportunities to be that team. With that being said, we'll never take for granted in Oklahoma City the opportunity to raise a banner in Chesapeake Arena, as we did for our 4th division title. We won't take for granted 59 wins. Those are things that we respect, we cherish, and most importantly, we understand will be hard to replicate. I think kind of the story of our season is twofold. One, we're proud of our outcomes, but we also understand that we accomplished a significant amount developmentally. We were obviously dealing with Russell's absence, which is part of sports, but I was incredibly proud of how the team performed. We won 70% of our games without him. We were dealt, another uncertainty at the end of the season. Without Kendrick and Tabo, we were able to go 10-5 in those games. And I really think that speaks to the coaching staff's job of utilizing the different options on the team, the development work that has taken place, and the versatility of the guys that are in place. I think being able to survive those circumstances is what high-performance teams are able to do. Being able to deal with the unforeseen and expect the expectations to remain consistent, which is what we've done. And I feel like we've gotten better as a result of that. Those guys, the supporting cast, getting meaningful minutes in big games and performing really gives us a lot of confidence as we look to the future, as I said earlier. Defensively, we've always talked about being a long, athletic team that ignites our offense with our defense. We were not as good in the second half of the season as we have been after the All-Star break. We struggle a little bit defensively. We need to get back to making that the staple of our team. When we're holding teams to 102 points per 100 possessions, we were able to do that 44 out of 48 times this season. We won 92% of our games. So that's an important number for us. It's an indicator that we can really increase our odds of winning both in the postseason and the regular season when we're around those metrics. And we need to continue to focus on that, and I think we will. I think we'll look at everything as we get to the off season. I think we have an understanding of where we have some margin to gain. I also think we've got a great base to work off. And the best teams in sports, the best businesses, in my opinion, are the ones that study their success, come back, understand what needs to be kept, but also the areas that need to be evolved and grown. And that will be a process that we're going to start on this off season, and as we have in the past, and see if we can carry over to the following year. So with that being said, I'm happy to take any questions.
Sam, if you were to, I guess, put a finger on why San Antonio's playing in the finals right now and not Oklahoma City, what would be the biggest reason or the biggest difference?
I've always said I think over 7 games, the better team wins. And they were the better team over 7 games this season. I think that they have an identity that they play to, and we have an identity that we play to. They're different. And over 7 games, over a 7-game series, they were able to capture theirs on a more regular basis than we were ours. We have a ton of respect for them. They're a great team. At the same time, we feel like we have a good basketball team in Oklahoma City as well. But they made plays at the end of games, and were able to capture their identity on a more regular basis than we were.
What was the biggest area you think all season, either through drafting, acquiring players, or just getting better with the existing players? What's the areas you need to get better at?
I think it's across the board. I think the first thing, Myron, is asking the right questions. And before you go into any off-season program or off-season analysis, I think you have to first understand that the season is much greater than the last game. Over 82 games, a preseason. I think back to we started the season overseas in Europe, playing Fenerbahce and playing Philadelphia in Manchester. And my hope is that we look back and we look at every single opportunity we had during the season to try to improve, to demonstrate a level of discipline, to improving over those 82 games. I have to look at everything externally, opportunities for us to improve the team, improve the roster. At the same time, allowing the players that we have in place the room to grow and continue to get opportunity, because those guys through the season impacted winning on a significant level. Obviously, when we got to the postseason, our rotation was shorter, which is natural. Scotty, like most coaches, will shorten the rotation in the postseason. But I can honestly say I feel really good about the contributions that just about every single player on our team made this season to impact the success that we had. And with more opportunity, I think that will only grow. But across the board, we have to look to get better. And I wouldn't say that differently than any other year we've been here. There's an expectation level in basketball operations that every department takes an honest look at themselves, understands what we're doing well, how much of it we're accounting for, and how much of it is random. And then we need to take some purposeful action to try to build off where we are. I do want to make sure that I'm clear that I think we've got a heck of a base, but to be a high-performing team year after year after year, self-evaluation and understanding, your strengths and where they can go to, I think is really important.
Can you assess Scott Brooks' performance this season and where he stands?
Sure. Scotty, I think, did an excellent job. I understand we all have a tendency to look at the last game or the last series. I respect that. That's part of sports. I can't do that. I'm looking at a body of work. I'm looking at an understanding of what drives our success and the way in which we've gotten to this point. Scott, like every single person in this organization, and I think he said this himself, is going to take a look at the ways that he can move the needle and grow incrementally. And again, that's the platform that we're on at this point. Is stacking successful seasons on top of each other, increasing our odds to, as I said earlier, take a really unique amount of time that we've been successful and extend that into a very, very unique amount of time. And in order to do that, you have to look at yourself critically every year. And that starts with me. That starts with everyone in the program. And I think Scott will do the same and come back a little bit better.
Any chance you'll consider the amnesty clause with Perkins?
I knew that I'd get that question. I wish I had something clever to say there, Barry, but I don't. We'll look at everything as we always do. But as we've said before, it's not something that's been considered to this point. Kendrick, as we know, is somebody that's contributed to a lot of our success. Quite honestly, we'd be having this press conference a lot sooner if he was not a part of the organization when we took the floor against Memphis. This conversation would probably be happening in May and not June. We understand that there's certain things he's exceptional at. I think he's been wonderful for Steven Adams, and I think he's had a lot to do with Steven's growth, especially in the postseason, specifically just with how he studies and plays position defense. It would take something that would really help us strategically to look at that.
Sam, I'm sure you, if you didn't see it, you at least read the transcript of what Perk had to say at his exit interviews. And one of the things was he thought that the team needed to be smarter, needed to take better care of the basketball. And he also urged guys to watch the finals to see how Miami and San Antonio do things. Would you agree with that assessment, and are you disappointed that your guys had some times there where maybe they weren't playing as smart as they should have played?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is that we want to have consistent performance for 48 minutes at all times. That's the goal. I think we've demonstrated that in spurts. I think there were certain points in the season in which we were playing maybe at the highest level we've ever played in Oklahoma City. December comes to mind, and parts of March. Our challenge is to be able to harness that on a regular basis and demonstrate that we're going to be able to meet that standard of play regardless of who we're playing, when we're playing, or where we're playing. That ability to concentrate and play through the different lulls of games, I think, is the mark of the greatest teams. And, I think we're capable of that, but we need to be able to do it on a more consistent basis. In terms of playing smarter, or what was the other thing you said? Turnovers.
That Perk said that they needed to play smarter and value the basketball.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would probably lean on what I said earlier. I think we've had stretches where we've been exceptional in that regard. And valuing the basketball has an impact on our defense, clearly, because when we turn it over, the question obviously is it a turnover that's a live ball turnover, or are we throwing it into the fourth row, or are we turning it over at the 3-point line and converting that into a 100% transition shot? One thing we do exceptionally well, not that anyone's really that interested in this, is we are number one in the league in transition defense in the first 4 or 5 seconds of the shot clock, and I think that's really helpful to speaks to the identity of the team and the athleticism and speed of the team, is that we have recovery ability. We're able to recover to some of the mistakes. If we can limit those mistakes and not necessarily lean on the recovery, that would be ideal. But we've got to work towards that, and I think we can.
Sam, I saw that Adam Silver said that because 3 of the 4 teams in the conference finals were small market teams, that was proof that the CBA is working. I'm just wondering whether, as somebody who leads one of those teams, whether you agree.
Well, I think Adam's great, and I think he does an excellent job. The only thing I would say relative to that is that the three teams he's referring to were more or less constructed prior to the CBA, and I think that the goal for each one of those teams is to continue their success, with the CBA notwithstanding, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge for all those teams. But it can be done. But I don't necessarily think that it's a result of the CBA. I think we're challenged to extend our success as a result of it.
You mentioned the fact you're in pretty good shape cap-wise. Does that mean, do you think you'll be more active in free agency this summer, or?
Well, I mean, I think we have to look at everything as we always do. I think we also have to understand that we have some decisions coming in the future, and we want to make sure that we're never in a position where what we do in one year robs the future years of their opportunity to maximize themselves. And I think we've been good about doing that. I think it's one of the reasons we're positioned to extend the current run that we have and continue to give ourselves as many opportunities as possible to impact the postseason and hopefully get to the finals and be the last team standing. But there's ways to augment the team in free agency, absolutely. The draft, where we have two choices. And then again, I think as was the case with Jeremy Lamb last season, sometimes improvement comes, without addition. And sometimes addition can create what's called compression. And my job is to calculate how we best get the most out of the team so that the coaches have as many options as possible to build the deepest team and put players on the floor that are going to grow throughout the season and probably throughout the years.
Sam, you mentioned one of the future decisions you have to make. How high on your priority list this offseason is Reggie's contract?
Well, Reggie obviously is a guy that we think highly of. He's come through the program. He's been given a myriad of opportunities, some by design and some out of necessity. And I think he's worked his way through all of those admirably. We're able to have conversations with him starting July 1st. Generally, these things don't happen in July, and the trend now is that they don't necessarily happen even by the October 31st deadline. But we are going to make a concerted effort to try to work something out with him that works for everybody. If that doesn't happen, then we'll pick the conversations up the following summer and see where that leads us.
You wouldn't necessarily trade him.
That's not something that we're considering, no.
What's your idea of Reggie's future? You talked the other day about he'd like to be a starter, he'd like to be the point guard.
Right.
There's probably a spot for him to start, probably not a spot for him to be the point guard.
Right.
What are your thoughts about his future?
Well, I mean, you've heard probably everyone say before that every player wants to start. So let me put that out there in front of you first. And then the next thing I'd say is that he's a guy that fits a profile of a Thunder player in the sense that he's got size for his position, he's got length and reach, quickness in tight spaces, and he's got a competitive will that we value. Those are things that we want, our identity to ultimately be. It also comes down to how your team is constructed. And the goal of any team is to get the most out of that team and maximize it based on the way it's built. And in his particular case, I don't know ultimately how that's going to be factored in. That's going to be Scott's decision. However, at the end of the day, I think Reggie would agree, we have to do what's best for the team, whether that's starting, coming off the bench. I think we've always made our decisions based on how to get the most out of what we have and how to put everybody in position to be successful and play to their strengths.
Sam, your three unrestricted free agents and Hashim, what are your plans on those guys?
All three of those guys have done good jobs for us. Some of them have been here longer than others, obviously, with Thabo. And we'll have conversations with all of them come July. We're not really at liberty to know too much at this point. Free agency is something that is earned. You know, they've played their contracts to the point where they'll have a chance to look around. They're not restricted, and I'm sure they're going to have plenty of opportunities, and we will as well. You know, and we will as well. But I can say that the group that we had this year was a very special group. To a person, and those of you that are around the team every single day, I do think that you'd attest that is a really good group of people, committed, trying to do the right thing, understanding that we have trials and tribulations over 82 games, but it was a very, very good collection of guys, and that really came through to me during my exit meetings. It's a quality group of individuals, and I was really proud to be associated with them.
Sam, will you try to get Tibor or Alex this summer?
Both of those guys have had good years. Tibor just finished his season. I believe he is in transit, or was in transit, back to Germany today from Spain. Alex is still playing. And, those are things that we'll take a look at once we get into the July period. A lot of it is timing for them. A lot of it is what they're thinking, and obviously our roster construction, our resources, what we can devote, to different spots on the roster. I think what you also have to take into account when you talk about, cap positioning is all of the different triggers that exist today with the cap, and how much you can spend before you start to trigger some really limiting aspects like a hard cap or the apron and things of that nature. I don't want to bore everybody with that, but managing today in our league is not just about budgeting. It's about strategic planning. That's why we created a position for it. And the decisions that we make 2 years ago are made with the foresight that there's going to be a player coming up named Reggie Jackson who we think is a big part of our future. And we're going to do everything we can to continue to add to the team without subtracting. I think that's an important concept. We don't want to be in a position where we have to subtract as a result of finances or cap strategy. We want to be in a position where we can add to the team without subtracting. And we feel that we're in that position. But there's many layers to the way the cap is designed now that really limits you based on your spending once you get to a certain point. We have to respect that. We have a group of people that I'm proud work for us that spend 365 days a year studying, and we will be prepared to make the best decision for the organization that we can when those things come up, including on a player like Tibor or Alex, but they're going to have great opportunities in Europe as well.
So Sam, Steven Adams' emergence didn't make you rethink Perk at all, with him being the heir apparent and those things?
Well, I think we can all look back on this season and say it was very productive for Steven. I think we see not only a player that fits our profile in terms of the work ethic and concentration on improvement that we value, but also a significant player that can fit the profile that we look for positionally as well. With that being said, I think we also have to understand that it's going to be a long road for him. There's going to be some ups and downs. Again, the recency bias is to face or to think specifically about the last couple games that he played. But I'd ask everyone this question: if our run ended in Game 5 of the Memphis series, we really wouldn't know what Steven was capable of, and we'd be maybe looking at all those questions a little bit differently. So the opportunity for us to continue to play gave us more opportunity to learn, but that 10-game stretch shouldn't really change our thinking too much. And I think Perk has really helped him in that regard. There's no question that Steven has a bright future here. Moderation has always been helpful for us in our development. Again, anything with Kendrick would have to have some kind of strategic advantage. To this point, it's not something that we've really looked at because we haven't seen the advantage.
Andre came in and talked to us a lot about adjusting his mechanics and working on. He really wants to work on his shot this summer. What is that process like in your mind?
He's made tremendous strides. He's maybe one of our best cases from a developmental standpoint, to go from not playing to starting and guarding the best player on every team every night is a tough task for anybody. But because of his makeup and his attributes and his understanding of how to fit within a group, I think he was excellent. I understand there'll be a focus on his shot. It's remarkably better in a year, but he's not a guy that scores that way. He's a guy that is going to score a lot of points as a cutter, an offensive rebounder. I mean, he led the country in rebounding 2 years in a row. That's something we have to figure out how to utilize. It's a tremendous skill set. He's great in transition because he's one of our best athletes. He can stretch out. He gets to the free throw line, and he shoots a high percentage because he understands where to get his shots from. I think his improvement this year has been excellent, and he's a dynamic player on the other end of the floor. I think Summer League will be great for him, but I think if we look at him and isolate him in one skill, I think we're not looking at really what his greatest strengths are and how we're going to use those.
The bench during the playoffs seemed to falter a little bit compared to what it was doing during the regular season. What needs to be added to make it, I guess, a playoff-ready type of bench that can help the starters during their postseason?
Sure. I totally understand that question. As I said, I think when the bench was on the floor in the regular season, they were one of our highlights. I think the opportunities that they were given, I think the coaches did an unbelievable job of trusting them, putting them in situations to carry certain stretches of the game, and I think they were excellent. I think with more opportunity, I think with more experience, which they've gained, I think that's going to make us. I think that's going to make us better. And again, I understand when you have to understand when you get into the postseason, almost all coaching staffs are going to shorten the rotation. But those guys were critical to getting us there. I'll look at ways we can fortify that, absolutely, and see what opportunities might be there. But I was pleased with their progress, and when they did get opportunities in the postseason, I think that it really boded well for us for future years as well.
Would you like to see Kevin's minutes managed more next season?
Well, I think one thing that we have to think through when it comes to that particular topic, just in general, just minute loads and things of that nature, is sometimes we don't see all the things that go on behind the scenes, and I think Scott's worked really hard to try to limit floor time for some of our primary players, so that he can make the trade-off to get a little more time on the floor. I think that as we go forward, there's no question that's something that we want to continue to look at, understand, not only for the long term, but also just to make sure that we're getting the most out of the minutes that are played during the one particular game or another. So it'll be something that we look at. I can't tell you, what comes of it, but I think that when you get a player that's coming into the prime years of his career, you're going to look, and especially a player Kevin's caliber or Russell's caliber, I think you have to look at it at all times as to how you're going to maximize the player, but also how you're going to continue to keep the player at peak performance for as long as possible, so that when you get to the postseason, you're not looking at it in short doses.
About what his future is going to be.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Chris has to make some decisions with his coaching, front office, whatever. Is that something he'll let you know first, and just your comments? If he got into your line, most people talk about the coaching, but if he goes to the front office,
sure,
how do you think that'll go?
Well, we have absolutely no reason to expect Derek to keep us informed of his plans. He's going to have to make the decisions that are best for him. We wish him the best. As with any player that's come through here, we want them to have a fulfilling experience as a professional, but also as a person, and reflect back on their time in Oklahoma City is a chance to do the best work of their career. That's a player or a staff member or anybody. I'm hopeful that he looks at that and he feels like he got better and improved in different ways while he was here. I think he'll be excellent in whatever he chooses to do. I know everyone said that. If he were to do something in the front office, I think he'd do well at that as well. But we don't have a right to know what he's doing. The only thing we have a right to is to support him because he's left an impact here in a positive way, as has players that have come before him that have gone on to exceptional coaching careers elsewhere, like Kevin Ollie.
What kind of options
Last
do you
question,
have draft-wise? You got 2 first-round picks. I know you probably don't want to bring 2 new guys on the roster. What kind of options do you have?
Well, I mean, we're in the midst of trying to figure that out, Anthony. So we have 21 and 29. We have to figure out, where the value is. We have to figure out, how to best utilize those tools to, improve the team now or in the future. We feel really good that, when you draft a player, you can develop them within your organizational culture, can build habits and develop them, in relation to your system and your current makeup of your team. So the draft has been something that we've looked at as an important part to our organizational building, but also our culture building. And we feel really good about, how we're positioned with the guys that we have accumulated and the roles that they'll play going forward, as opportunity continues to present itself and experience accumulates. I wouldn't rule out anything, but I wouldn't rule out moving those selections either, depending on, what's sitting there. I think there's a big difference between picking a player and selecting a player. And when you're picking from not necessarily things that you want. Selecting, to me, is when you're selecting something from a pool that you value. And we want to be in a position to select. If we're in a position simply to pick, then we'll probably move the pick on.